You started at this angle, and then you did D2 to solve this piece, and then a U2, and then you did an X prime, and then UL2, which would solve 3 of the pieces, and then DR prime D2. I generally do not recommend rotating during cross, so a better solution, in my opinion, would be having yellow on top and orange in front, or even something like this, just to make it 2-gen. So you do small R2, and then R, D, R prime, D2, and then you can just finish it off with an F. So it's not completely 2-gen, but you get the point. It's regripless. And just another thing to be aware of, when you're at a place like this, I would recommend doing D, R prime, F2, like this. Because when you do a UL2, that would move your left hand off, and then you would have to reset it just to finish off the last 3 moves like that. For your first pair, you did this one, which is very good. So you did U prime, R, U2 prime, R prime, U2, and then you just inserted the 3-move insert into the left. I would recommend doing a U2 flick with your left hand with 2 fingers like this. Because when you do it with only 1 finger, you're going to reset it. So it's faster to do it with a double flick. After this, you wasted quite a few moves. So I think you were going for this pair next, but you didn't see it right away. So you did a U, and then you rotated, and then you did a U again, and then you rotated this way, but then you rotated back. I'm assuming this is when you solve this pair. And then after that, you solve the pair, like this. I don't think there's anything terribly wrong with the way that you executed the pair, but in terms of transitioning from first to second pair, that definitely needs work, because you could have just gone from the first pair to seeing these 2 pieces, rotating once, and not wasting any moves, and just going straight into it. After that, you did a U prime 3 like this, before inserting the pair into the back. What I would recommend doing instead is seeing the pair before you do any U moves, and then just inserting it with R prime U2 R, which is a lot more efficient. Another reason to insert it from this angle, like this, as opposed to inserting it from here, is that you regripped when you inserted the pair into the back, and even if you choose not to regrip, you're going to have to use this very awkward drag finger trick, which is very risky. So it's better to just insert it in when it's already over here, like this. I'm not saying that if it's already over here from the beginning, then you should do a U prime and insert it using a U2. It's just that if you find it here at the start, you should insert it like this. You went straight into your last pair after your third pair, which is good, but you did a U2 prime like this, and then did this pair. What I would recommend doing instead is a U2 flick with your left hand like this. If you're going to use your left hand, or even using the right hand would be fine. Another thing to take note of is that this algorithm to solve this pair that you used uses only R and U moves, and as you could see, all 4 of the yellow edges are misoriented, which means that if you do this pair using the solution that you used, it's actually going to give you a dot OLL. So at this point, you should probably be able to recognize that after you pair it up, you can actually cancel into a sledgehammer and save 1 move, and also get 2 edges oriented at once. And having an OLL with 2 edges oriented is often better than getting a dot case. After that, you did this OLL algorithm that I am not familiar with, but here you did a rotation in the middle, and that's something that I wouldn't be a huge fan of. The algorithm I would use instead is from this angle. It's just R U2 R prime, sledgehammer, U2, like this, and then you have this VLS case. After OLL, you had an A perm, and the way that you did it is like this. So what I would recommend doing instead is using ring pinky, like this. Some other people use pinky ring, it doesn't matter, but just make sure that you double flick during the D2s, because that's going to allow them to be faster, like that, as opposed to something like this.
We have to pay him though, and I don't see why he should set you in. After all, it's our fault that a caravan was moved here. I think this is already an unfriendly place that I don't want to stay here another day. I'm not enjoying it. You're upsetting.
For your second solve, you did these 2 cross pieces first, so this one and this one. So you did UL U prime, and then you rotated upward like this with an X prime, and then did U prime B2 to finish off the cross. I think your solution, in terms of the moves that you did, is completely fine, but I would do it from a different angle, something like this. So I would do these 3, or these 2 from the back, and that would solve the cross. After the cross, you rotated upward like this, and then back down, and then you did Y, U prime, Y, U prime, Y, U2, and then that's when you saw this pair. So at this point, I could already say that your cross to F12 transition definitely needs to improve, and also, you shouldn't waste random moves, or rotations when you cannot find certain pieces, because that's only going to make it harder. So at this point, you were probably going to do RU R prime to set them up to a free pair, but instead you did R R prime and then U prime. So I guess you wanted to set it up like this, and then after that you did a small d and then inserted these two in. So since you're averaging about 12 seconds, I think this is around the time where you should start using more advanced techniques such as multi-slotting. And if you could look ahead to see this pair is next, or it would be a good pair to do next, you could actually pair this pair up like this, but before inserting it into here, you do a U, L, and then that's going to set this up to 3-move insert, and then you would only waste a few moves just to get this extra pair in, which is probably worth it. But all of that can be completely forgotten if you use this other solution that is only 5 moves long just for the first pair, and that would be U prime, like this, just to set it up, and then you do 5 moves, F, 3-move insert, and then F prime. For your second pair, you ended up doing this pair, which, going back to what I said earlier, you could have multi-slotted, but after this pair gets inserted, the solution that you did was perfectly fine. The only comment that I would make on your finger tricks would be the first move. So instead of doing R prime U2 R like this, what you did was kind of a slight regrip. It wasn't all the way, so it puzzles me a little bit. And then by the third move, you were pretty much back to home grip. So I'm not really sure what that was about, but I would definitely try to cut down on that. For your third pair, after a slight pause, which again just means you should work on look ahead, you did these two like this, and then you inserted the pair into the back with a very advanced insert. And I think that's good, but a way that you could do it before you even pair it up is like this. Going on to your fourth pair, you did a U prime, and then you regripped, and then solved it like this. So going back to before you even did the U prime here, you could actually do a small D prime like this, and then solve it from this angle with a much more efficient solution, L prime U2 L, and that sets it up. After that, you had a standard last layer with pretty good finger tricks. Here, I noticed that you did a U2 with your right hand, and then did the F move with your middle finger like this, and I think that's completely fine. But the way that I do it is using your left hand for both U2s, so that you wouldn't have to use the middle finger to do the F move, which is a bit risky. But if you're comfortable with that, then it's completely fine. I have nothing to say about that. You did D prime to solve this edge, and then R, F prime, and then U2, L2. Generally, crosses have to use many different types of moves, R, U, L, D, F, etc. But in this case, instead of using L moves to insert the last edge, what you can do is D, R prime, D2, F prime, R2, and that's going to be more efficient because it's easier to have better finger tricks. After your cross, you did a U prime, and then looked over here, rotated back. And so again, I know I'm getting repetitive, but it's very important to nail your transition from cross to F2L just to avoid wasting moves like this. But after that, you did U2, L prime, UL, and paired it up, so that was pretty move efficient. But here, you did a regrip to insert the pair into the back, like this. Instead, I would recommend using the drag finger trick. Here, you chose to go for this free pair, so you did a rotation, and then you inserted the pair in like this. But after that, you rotated back. And generally, I wouldn't recommend doing rotations just for one pair, and then rotating back to where you were before. So if you're going to rotate, I would do this pair, like this, and then just rotate back for the last pair. But if you followed your own solution, you would have to do more rotations, because you would be changing good and bad edges repeatedly. For your third pair, you did end up choosing this pair, but if you're going to rotate back, it's better to just do this pair. And I know I sound very confusing when I say all this stuff about rotations, but when you're at this angle, don't even rotate back, just focus on this pair from this angle. But what you did instead was this, and then you sledged the pair in like this, and that would turn this into a bad edge. So try to track good and bad edges so you know how to rotate, how to insert, etc. to make other cases easier. After this, you rotated and then inserted the pair in with L moves. And from this angle, I would actually recommend doing a sledgehammer because it's faster than rotating. And then you can just insert this in, whether it's normally or if you want full edge orientation, do a sledge. In your last layer, you did a U2 and then this OLL. One thing I would change about your execution is that you should not regrip like this to start out the algorithm. It's definitely awkward, but still possible to do it like this. And I did reset my thumb at this point, but it's not going to waste as much time. For PLL, you started by doing a U prime, and then a U2, and then a U. From over here, you should use two-sided PLL recognition. If you see all the 5 of these pieces solved, and this adjacent sticker, then you have a JB perm, and you can just do a U2 and go straight into it. You did L, and then U prime, and then you did an R2. I guess that would solve these 3 pieces. And then after that, you paused for a little bit, and you even rotated like this before solving the last piece. I will admit that this is not the best of crosses, but the way that I would have done this is D2, U2, L, F prime, and I would have solved these 3. And then you can do an R2 to solve the last one, and if you want to make an X cross, just insert this edge down here, like that, and then you do a D prime. If you wanted to go even fancier, you could do an E2 in the beginning and solve the cross like that, but I don't think that would be as comfortable, for me at least, but that's just another option out there. For your first pair, you did these 2, and you did a U prime, and then double sexy to pair it up, but instead you could solve it all with 7 moves, with L prime U2 L U, L prime U prime L. For your second pair, you did U prime 3 times, and then I guess that's when you saw this. So you did a U2, and then solved it like this. So after one U prime, the rest of the U2s that you did, with the U prime 2 after the first U prime, and then a clockwise U2, it completely cancels out. So you only have to do 1 in order to see this pair, and go straight into it. And note my finger trick here, where I went like this. What you did was regrip, which is a lot slower, because a regrip takes longer than a move. After that, you rotated, and then you solved this pair. So you did U prime, R prime, U prime, R. All good so far. But here, you did a U2, regripped, and inserted the pair into the back. So again, you might want to try to avoid the regrip. So when you're over here, instead of doing a U2 and then having to regrip or using this drag finger trick, what you can do instead is just a U, R prime, U2, R. And that would have better finger tricks. Here you did a U prime U, so that's even more of wasting moves. And then R, U prime, R prime to pair it up. But here it seems that you regripped, so it's easier to do the sledgehammer. I'm not really sure exactly what you did there, but what I would have done instead is this to sledge it in. And that would have absolutely no regrips. Now I'm not really sure whether you're left-handed or right-handed, but based on some of the other algorithms that you've been doing, it seems that you're right-handed. So when you're at this angle, it's better to just do the soon, like this, and go straight into the Z perm, instead of doing a U2 and then using L moves. And it seems that you didn't recognize it immediately, and that's totally fine. It's natural to have a pause right before OLL, but I don't think it's necessary to be using U moves like this before recognizing the OLL and doing the algorithm. After that, you had a Z perm, and you used an algorithm that I'm not very familiar with. So you did a U, U prime, M prime, U2, M2, U2, M prime, U prime, M2, U prime, M2, U. To avoid AUF here, I would use this other algorithm. For your last cross, you did U, L, F prime, R prime, F, B2, B. This cross is definitely not good, so I'm not going to have the best solutions here, but I think a better way to do it is starting in this grip, L, D, L, and then your right hand is kind of free to do whatever, so you do R prime, B prime, R, and that's going to solve the cross. It will end you in a weird grip, but I think it's faster than having to do a B2 and regrips in the middle of your cross. Another way to solve the cross is small r, U prime, and then inserting the red edge in, and then finishing off the cross like that. If I were to use your solution though, I would have executed it like this. For your first pair, you chose to do these two, but I think these two pieces are better because it's only going to take 5 moves to solve. But you chose this one anyway, and it's a bad edge, so you had to rotate in order to solve it. After the first pair, you wasted a bunch of moves and rotations. So you started by doing a Y, and then U prime, Y U prime, Y prime, and then you did a U prime 3 times, and then you finally paired up these two pieces and inserted the pair into the back using a regrip. So going back to before any of that happened, you could have done a U prime, and just from here, you would have already seen the pair, and then you would have inserted the pair in like that. And even at this point, you should have inserted the pair in with U R prime U2 R, again just to avoid doing the regrip and having better finger tricks. For your third pair, you chose these two pieces, which I understand, but you could have done these two with F, fat, sexy move, F prime, like that. But going back to what you did a double sexy move, and then sledged the pair in. So I would recommend rotating and solving it like this. And even if that results in this being a bad edge, and the fact that you rotated, I think it's still faster. At this point, you could have seen this edge in the back. You wouldn't be able to see both colors, but you would be able to see that these 4 edges all have yellow on it, and that this edge over here has blue on it, and so this one must be red, even if you don't see it. So it would have to go in here. And you could have avoided a rotation, and just paired it up like this, and inserted the pair in with a sledge. But what you did instead was a Y prime, and then 3 U primes, so again with the wasting U primes, and then sledgehammer, and this part was fine with your insert, and you even had the pinch insert, so good finger tricks, that's all fine. But again, just try to avoid the rotation, and even if you end up rotating, don't waste moves. You had this OLL again, and immediately after the 4th pair, you did a U prime, but it wasn't until this point that you seemed to recognize the OLL, because I noticed that you paused, and if you had done a U prime and gone straight into the OLL, that would have been really good. But since you did a U prime after the 4th pair before even recognizing the OLL, that just shows that you did the U prime out of no reason. So I would try to recognize the OLL before doing any moves. If you finished F2L from this angle, and you did a U prime for no reason, then you would be at the wrong angle for the OLL, and you would have to do a U to get back to the correct angle. So with your execution, again, avoid the regrip like this. Just do it like this instead. And then you had a G perm. So you did a U, and then R prime, U prime, R. And then you did a Y rotation, and pretty much completely regripped. I would recommend doing R prime, and then using your thumb and index finger to kind of do a rotation. And that way you can minimize the regrip. Overall, your biggest strength is being able to turn fast, especially in the last layer. However, in F2L, that turning speed is stopping you from achieving fluidity. Your look ahead is very much hindered by the high turn speed that you have, which leads to unnecessary pauses between pairs and also between cross and first pair. That's not the only problem. You also spam U moves and rotations before deciding that it's necessary. If you take out the unnecessary moves and rotations and keep all the other moves the same, your average would have been almost 40 moves or rotations more efficient, or 8 moves less in each solve, probably saving more than a second and getting you sub 12 instantly. Adding on to that, taking out those moves and rotations will also make look ahead easier, so you would save even more time by removing some of the pauses. You can also save some time by making your crosses more efficient. Your average cross dilution in moves is around 6, which is very good, but you also rotated 4 times during your cross dilutions over a span of just 5 solves, and that number should be 0 if possible, 1 in worst case scenarios. I also noticed that you regripped a lot, and putting all these together, it ends up taking you almost 2 seconds just to execute 6 moves for cross. The unnecessary regrips also happen during F2L. Now for some things that you can do to solve these problems. First of all, practice with effective usage of inspection, and secondly, solve slowly enough to avoid pausing and wasting moves and rotations. I don't know how much inspection you used on each solve, but you should use inspection to the fullest. When trying to improve the beginning of your solve, you should practice with unlimited inspection. Plan out the entire cross as efficiently as possible, considering regrips and rotations, and if you can do that, then try to plan out the first pair. Even if you can't, at least try to figure out the places the 2 pieces would end up regardless of orientation. Here I have your first scramble, and I'm going to plan out the most efficient cross solution that I could think of, and that would be D prime to move this blue edge over to here, R, and that's going to solve this edge, D, they're going to move the 2 edges from here to here, and then R prime, F2, D prime. So the entire solution in total is D prime, R, D, R prime, F2, D prime. And looking at this corner, I'm tracking my first pair. So I do the D prime, that would move the white sticker over to here, and then the R is going to move it here. And when I do the D, it doesn't change the position of this corner, And when I do R prime, it's going to move it over to here. F2 would move it over to here, and D prime doesn't change it. So in the end, this corner is going to end up over here. As for the edge, the first 4 moves are R and D, so that's not going to affect this. And the R2 is going to move it over to here with the red sticker on this side, and then the D prime doesn't change anything. So the edge is a lot easier to track here, but what I just did was plan out the first pair in inspection after the cross, and so I already know I can go straight into the first pair with the white sticker being here, and this edge with the red sticker being here. And that makes a smooth transition. If you can do that on every solve, then your F2L is going to be a lot more fluid, because you wouldn't be struggling at the beginning to find pieces. When practicing F2L, you should turn slowly, as many others advise, but don't go this slowly. Go as fast as possible, as long as you don't pause. If you can see the next pair while solving the current pair, then you are doing great and can try turning faster. But if you're solving a pair and cannot see the next one, then you should slow down the turning. One way you can try this practice is with a metronome. Another thing to look out for while doing this is refraining from switching hands. I haven't mentioned this yet, but you switched hands a lot in F2L. So, for example, with this pair, if we just solve the cross and we find it over here, you can do 2 things. You can either do U prime and then do R prime, U2, R to pair it up, but then you would have to switch hands because when you insert it, you do L, U, L prime. But what you can do instead is U, and just do it with only L and U moves like this. And they are pretty much the same move count, but doing this is more fluid because you're not switching hands. I hope this helped. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to make my critiques better. Thanks for watching.